Hi, I'm Pam Ragland. I'm a single mom of 2 kids. I've got a daughter with ADD and a son with autism, and I've become an accidental innovator in the field of autism. And I want to help you learn how to identify the signs and symptoms, or if you already know a child that's got autism or ADD, to learn what to do to help them more. So that's what this is all about. You may not realize, but autism has gone from 1 in every 150 kids to now it's 1 in every 50 kids by the year 2013. And ADD is now 1 in every 5 boys in high school. So this is really an epidemic. And part of what is making this epidemic worse is that these kids are not getting identified early. So let me tell you a little bit about my story and how we learned that my son was autistic. And then I want you to take some paper and take some notes. And also at the end, I'm going to give you some things to do. But one thing that's really important is forward this video on to other people, because there's a lot of people that may be sitting there with a lot of these signs and symptoms, and autism isn't even on their radar. And that's what happened with me. Like, it didn't even occur to me that my son could be autistic, not because I was resistant to it, but just because I had no idea. I really had no idea. So my son was relatively normal for the first 6 years of his life. He really wasn't having any issues. The only problem that he had was he had a speech delay. So I want you to write that down, because sign number 1 of autism is a speech delay. And it could be minor speech delay or it could be major. In my son's case, he had 80% speech impairment, which makes it major. But he wasn't having any of the other typical, again, autism symptoms. But he did have a speech delay. So that was the first sign. Other than that, he was fine. But a lot of these symptoms are things that are, they're symptoms that are in response to stress. So it might be other stresses, so write this down. Another thing that can bring some of these things on can be major stresses like divorce, moving, changing schools, death of a loved one, any of those major traumas that can happen. It could even be the death of a pet that change their world, and they rock their world so much that all of a sudden they don't know how to cope. And once we got forcibly evicted, my son started having major issues. Now, again, I still thought it was because of the trauma of being, kicked out of our house, and it was, but it was more than that. What happened is the trauma brought out his autism symptoms, where previously, because of the quantum thought shifting I had done with them, and a really stable environment, he was fine. So some of the things that my son started doing is he started flapping his arms. He started chewing on me and nibbling on me. He started having outbursts and meltdowns in school. He started getting in trouble all the time. I was at school like 3 times a week. But finally, after 3 years, he hadn't learned anything. And that was the thing that made them finally evaluate him and identify that he was autistic. But even when they did, they said, you know what, we think he's autistic, but he's not like any other autistic kid that we've ever seen. And we had the head of the district, who was the expert in autism, saying this. And I knew in that moment that my quantum thought shifting process had helped him be relatively normal. So I went back and I made a couple changes to my process, and he went from not reading to reading in 2 months, which was great. And I want to say that he has gotten like almost entirely caught up in school from being behind for 3 years. So that's really good news. But he was still having trouble self-soothing and things like that. So some of the other things that may happen, some of the other signs that you want to look for, are kids that are obsessive over things. They might look at, let's say, a toy or Legos or airplanes or something, and they obsess about it. They learn everything they can about that, and they obsess about it. They may have learning difficulties. Some of them don't. They may have speech difficulties. But definitely speech difficulty with behavior issues is a red flag. And now here's what happens if we don't identify the kids. Then, just like my son, they get labeled as a bully. They get in trouble all the time at school. They start to think that there's something wrong with them. We as parents get frustrated. Sometimes we even resort to medicating them. But I can tell you, I've written a book about addictions. Half of the kids that go on ADD medicine end up becoming some type of an addict later on. So we don't want to medicate the kids. What we want to do is find solutions to help them learn the skills so that they can go forward and have a happy and productive life. And part of that involves identifying them early and getting them the skills, and also insisting that our schools do the right thing. Another thing that we did was my son and I worked together and we created a CD and a video that to help him learn how to self-soothe. It helps with self-esteem, it helps with him learning how to be calm, and we put that together. He tested it out, he gave me some feedback, he told me that I had to slow down in some of the areas, but it's something that kids play at night, and then they learn these skills so that during the day they can actually start to learn to do something about some of their meltdowns on their own. They feel better about themselves, they realize that they have a purpose here, and they sleep better. So we put that together. If you want to find out more about that, then take a look at the link below. I hope that you're going to pass this on to some of your friends, because your friends, your loved ones, your family, pass it on to as many people as you can, because you know what, I know from experience, sometimes even if you identify it and you tell somebody, they may not want to hear it. But the truth is that we do these kids such a great service not to let them suffer. I mean, my son suffered for 3 years when he didn't have to. Kids don't have to go through that. They don't have to go through that. And with so many, foreclosures and traumas and things like that, chances are that there's a lot more kids. I mean, I see them coming to me all the time who are being impacted by these things, and even if they were identified as autistic, their symptoms are getting worse. So that's what the CD is for. It helps with that. I hope you'll take a look at that. I hope you're going to pass this on to tell your friends, because this is an epidemic and we need to put a stop to it. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you sticking with me to the end, and I hope that this has been valuable to you. And I hope to hear from you and connect with you personally. Bye.